A single flight attendant's words set off a chain reaction that would cost an airline $200 million. He was sitting in seat 1A in first class, a ticket he paid for. She saw a problem. He saw the same old story. But this time, the man she tried to move wasn't just any passenger. He was the one man she couldn't afford to anger. When she told him to move or be removed, she didn't just challenge a passenger. She threatened an empire. And that empire struck back, not with anger, but with a single phone call that brought the entire airline to its knees. The air inside Terminal 7 at John F. Kennedy International Airport was a familiar kind of chaos. It was thick with the scent of stale coffee, jet fuel, and the anxious sweat of travelers hurrying to their destinations. It was the smell of transit, a scent Marcus Thorne knew better than the expensive cologne he had dabbed on hours ago, a scent that now felt like a distant memory. He was tired. Not just missed a good night's sleep. Tired, but a deep, bone-weary exhaustion that came from closing a $1.2 billion acquisition in Frankfurt, a deal that had taken 72 straight hours of negotiation, legal wrangling, and the sheer force of his will to drag across the finish line. Marcus Thorne was the founder and CEO of Thorne Dynamics, a company that had revolutionized global logistics. To the world, Thorne Dynamics was a boring B2B company that moved things. To the clients on its roster, governments, military contractors, and global conglomerates, it was the invisible circulatory system of their entire operation. If Thorne Dynamics stopped, their world stopped, and Marcus Thorne, the man at the heart of it, was currently invisible himself. He wore a simple, charcoal grey cashmere hoodie, the kind that costs more than a monthly mortgage payment, but whispers its quality rather than shouts it. Faded denim, a pair of understated but clearly bespoke leather sneakers, and a simple black watch on his wrist. The only hint of his status was the Platinum Centurion card he had used to buy a bottle of water, and the quiet, immovable confidence he exuded as he waited by the gate for Flight 2217, Transatlantic Air's flagship, non-stop to London Heathrow. He was in boarding Group 1, first class. He didn't fly private for these intercontinental hops. He found it wasteful when a commercial carrier's first class was, as he put it, perfectly adequate for 8 hours of sleep. We now invite our first-class passengers to board. The voice was tinny. Marcus pulled one of his noise-cancelling earbuds out, slung his slim leather satchel over his shoulder, and joined the short queue. He scanned his boarding pass, the machine beeped green, and he walked down the jet bridge. He stepped onto the plane, an Airbus A350, and was greeted by a flight attendant with a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. "Welcome aboard," she chirped, her eyes scanning his hoodie and jeans with a flicker of something. Appraisal? No. Dismissal. "Good evening," Marcus said, his voice a low baritone, rough with exhaustion. "1A. To the left, sir." Her smile was already gone, turning to the next passenger behind him. Marcus found his seat, the spacious pod at the very front of the plane. He stowed his satchel, slid off his sneakers, and sank into the plush leather. He was asleep before the attendant even came by to offer a pre-departure drink. He missed the arrival of the other first-class passengers, the banker in 2C, who immediately started a loud phone call about synergy, the aging actress in 3F applying makeup, and the gentleman in 2A, who was already complaining about the champagne selection. He also missed the entrance of the flight's senior purser, Karen Peterson. Karen was a woman who believed in order. She had been with Transatlantic for 22 years, and she ran her cabin, especially the first-class cabin, with an iron fist clad in a velvet glove. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a flawless, shellacked bun. Her uniform was impeccable, and as she reviewed the passenger manifest, she noted a discrepancy. Seat 1A, their prime window pod, was occupied, but her manifest, and the mental picture she had, suggested it should be empty for a last-minute VIP upgrade. She looked over. She didn't see a high-value client. She saw a man in a hoodie, asleep, his sneakers kicked off. She saw a problem. She saw someone who had likely talked his way into an upgrade. Someone who didn't belong. A surge of righteous indignation, the kind she felt when things were not in their proper place, rose in her chest. She had a VIP passenger, a Mr. Chadworth, a Platinum for Life member, who was currently seated in 3C and had quietly requested something closer to the front if it became available. 1A was available as far as she was concerned. The man sleeping there was an error in the system. She walked over to the galley where her younger colleague, Susan, was preparing hot towels. "Susan, who let that on?" Karen gestured with her chin toward 1A. Susan, young and non-confrontational, looked confused. "That's Mr. Thorne. Boarding pass was fine. He's 1A. He's 1A, Karen mimicked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. He's asleep, and he looks like he's ready for a basketball game, not a first-class flight to London. I have Mr. Chadworth in 3 years, a real high-value passenger who wants that seat." "But, Karen, the seat is his. The manifest is locked. We can't just—" "Watch me," Karen said. She smoothed her skirt, painted on her customer service smile, and marched toward seat 1A. She placed a hand on the shell of the pod and shook it, gently at first, then firmly. Marcus Thorne woke with a start. The cabin lights were bright, the engines were whining, and a woman with sharp features and sharper eyes was staring down at him. "Sir," she said, her voice a sickly sweet coo. "Sir, I'm going to need to see your boarding pass." Marcus blinked, the fog of his deep, 2-minute nap clearing slowly. He looked at the woman. The name on her badge read Karen. Of course it did. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice still gravelly. "Your boarding pass, sir. I need to see it. We have a discrepancy with the seating in this cabin." Karen's smile was plastered on, but her eyes were cold, scanning him as if looking for a weapon, or perhaps just a reason. Marcus sighed. This wasn't his first time. The check. The double check. The implication that his presence was a clerical error, a cosmic mistake. He reached into his satchel, pulled out his leather passport holder, and retrieved the stiff cardstock of his boarding pass. He handed it to her. Karen looked at it, her eyes flicking from the Thorne Marcus to the 1A and back. She was, for a split second, disappointed. It was legitimate. But a good soldier doesn't retreat. They simply change their line of attack. "Mr. Thorne," she said, drawing the name out as if it were unfamiliar. "I'm afraid there's been a mistake in our system. This seat is showing as blocked for a priority passenger. I'm going to have to move you." Marcus took his boarding pass back from her outstretched hand. "The system seemed to work fine when I checked in, when I went through customs, and when I scanned it 10 feet from here. The seat is 1A. I'm in 1A. I'm not moving." He put his earbud back in, a clear, universally understood sign for "this conversation is over." This was, to Karen, an act of open rebellion. The nerve. She tapped him on the shoulder, a sharp, acrylic-nailed tap, tap. He removed the earbud, his expression no longer tired, but now utterly flat. It was a look that made a dozen of his vice presidents shrink. It had no effect on Karen Peterson. "Sir, you don't understand," she said, her voice losing its sweetness and taking on a stern, matronly tone. "We have a situation. I have a very important passenger who needs this seat. I found you another, very comfortable seat in our main cabin." She hadn't. She was bluffing. She was testing him. "The main cabin," Marcus repeated. He didn't ask it as a question. He stated it as a fact, the absurdity of it. "It's a very nice exit row. Lots of legroom," she offered, as if this were a kindness. From 2 rows back, a man's voice boomed. "Is there a problem here, Karen? This guy giving you trouble?" This was Mr. Chadworth. He was in his 50s, with a florid, gin-blossomed face and the unearned confidence of a man who had inherited his wealth. He was standing in the aisle, looking at Marcus with open contempt. Karen turned to him, her face instantly melting into a mask of fawning deference. "Oh, Mr. Chadworth, no trouble at all. I'm just handling a small seating issue. I may have that seat you were asking about free in just a moment." "Good," Chadworth grunted, staring at Marcus. Some people just don't understand how these things work. Marcus watched this exchange, this little piece of theatre. It was no longer about a seat, it was about a place. It was about who belonged, and who decided who belonged. Karen, emboldened by her ally, turned back to Marcus. Her smile was gone. This was an order. "Sir, you need to take your belongings and move, now." "No," Marcus said. It was a quiet word, but it landed in the hushed cabin like a gavel. "What did you say?" "I said no. I am in the seat I purchased, with the money I earned. On the Airline, I am a 1,000,000-mile, executive concierge-level member of. I am not moving to an exit row in economy. Not for you, not for Mr. Chadworth, not for anyone. Are we clear?" He had raised his voice, just slightly, enough for the other passengers to stop their pre-flight rituals and turn. The cabin was now silent, save for the hum of the auxiliary power. Karen's face flushed a deep, blotchy red. This was not just insubordination, it was a public humiliation. She had miscalculated. She thought he was a random, lucky upgrade. The mention of his status, which she could have and should have checked, threw her. But she was in too deep to back down now. "Sir, if you continue to be non-compliant and refuse a crew member's instructions, I will be forced to have you removed from this aircraft. This is a matter of security." She used the magic word. The word that can end careers, start wars, and, in an airport, justify any action. Security. Marcus Thorne looked at her. He saw her. He saw the years of petty tyranny, the small-minded bigotry that she dressed up as procedure. He saw a woman who had just made the single biggest mistake of her professional life. He slowly, deliberately, picked up the in-flight magazine from the side pocket. He opened it to a random page and began to read. "I'm not moving," he said, without looking up. "You do what you have to do." Karen's eyes narrowed to slits. "I will," she hissed. She spun on her heel and marched towards the cockpit, her face a mask of righteous fury. "I'm calling the captain, and I'm calling the gate." The cabin was silent. Mr. Chadworth scoffed. "Should have just moved, pal. You're in for it now." Marcus turned a page. He was reading about the best places to ski in Aspen. He'd never been. He found he was suddenly very interested. The 10 minutes that followed were a masterclass in tension. The other first-class passengers were now openly staring, some with smartphones held low, recording. Susan, the younger flight attendant, moved through the cabin, her face pale, offering champagne and orange juice with a trembling hand, her eyes darting to 1A and then quickly away. Marcus accepted a glass of water. He took a sip, his hand perfectly steady. Karen, meanwhile, was in the galley, holding the internal phone to her ear. She was speaking in a loud, frantic whisper to the gate agent, a woman named Brenda. "I'm telling you, he's a risk," Karen said, her voice sharp. "He's non-compliant, he's agitated, and he's refusing to follow a crew member's direct instruction. I don't feel safe with him on this flight." Brenda's voice on the other end was tired. "Karen, the flight is full. We're already 20 minutes behind our pushback time. You're telling me you want to deplane a first-class passenger, process his bags, and take an hour-long delay because he... What? Won't switch seats? He's being aggressive, Karen insisted, conveniently forgetting that she had been the one to initiate and escalate the contact. He raised his voice. He's threatening. Is he threatening you? Did he use threatening language? His tone is threatening. His presence. He doesn't belong here, Brenda, I'm telling you. Just get security. I want him off. She hung up and then knocked on the cockpit door. The door opened a crack, and the co-pilot, First Officer Davies, a young man in his late 20s, peered out. What is it, Karen? We're trying to get our clearance. We have a situation in 1A, a non-compliant passenger. I've called the gate, but I need you or the captain to come out and back me up. He's refusing to move and I need him removed. Davies sighed. He didn't like Karen Peterson. He found her abrasive and a bully to the junior crew, but procedure was procedure. Captain Miller is running the pre-flight checks. I'll handle it. Davies stepped out of the cockpit. He was immediately struck by the silence of the cabin. This was not the loud, drunken passenger scenario he had expected. He saw a black man in a hoodie, sitting calmly in 1A, reading a magazine. He saw Karen, her arms crossed, her face like thunder. He saw Mr. Chadworth, who gave him a thumbs up, and pointed. That's the guy, officer, causing all the trouble. Officer, Davies thought. I'm a pilot. He walked over, his expression carefully neutral. Good evening, sir. I'm First Officer Davies. My colleague tells me there's some confusion about your seat. Marcus lowered the magazine and looked at Davies. He gave him a long, appraising look. There is no confusion, officer. I'm in seat 1A. This is my boarding pass. Miss Peterson, your purser, has taken it upon herself to demand I move to an exit row in economy to accommodate Mr. Chadworth over there. That is not what happened, Karen interjected. He's twisting my words. He's being disruptive. Was I disruptive, sir? Marcus asked, looking past Karen to the banker in 2C. The banker, who had been filming the entire time, shrugged. Honestly. No, you've been quiet. She's been loud. Karen's head snapped toward the banker. This is a crew matter. It doesn't concern you. Davies held up a hand. Karen, let me handle this. Sir, he said, turning back to Marcus. I understand you're in your assigned seat, but we have a situation. The purser is the authority in this cabin, and if she gives an instruction for the safety and security of the flight, you need to follow it, even if it seems unreasonable. We can sort out the compensation and the why on the ground, but right now, I need you to de-escalate this. Will you please, just for now, move to... Where? He looked at Karen. I don't have another seat for him now, she snapped. He's caused a scene. I want him off the plane. Davies's face hardened. This was a different-level accusation. Karen, you can't just... That's a security-level decision. And I'm making it, she said, her voice rising to a near shout. He's a threat. At that moment, 2 uniformed airport security officers and the gate agent, Brenda, appeared at the door of the aircraft. The passengers gasped. This was real. That's him, Karen said, pointing a finger at Marcus. He's the one. He's refusing to leave. The security officers, large men who looked ready for a fight, began to move down the narrow aisle. Mr. Chadworth was grinning. Show's over, buddy. Enjoy the bus. Marcus Thorne watched them approach. The magazine was still in his lap. He didn't look scared. He didn't look angry. He just looked done. He had tried. He had tried to be quiet, to be compliant, to just get home. He had shown his pass. He had stated his case, and the system, in the form of Karen Peterson, had decided he was a threat. Sir, The first officer, a man named Officer Malone, said, his voice a low rumble. "We've been informed you are non-compliant and are being removed from this flight. Please gather your belongings and come with us." Marcus looked at Malone. He looked at the other officer. He looked at the co-pilot, Davies, who suddenly looked very young and very out of his depth. He looked at Karen, who was standing by the galley with a look of profound, venomous triumph. "All right," Marcus said, his voice calm. He stood up. Karen's smile was blinding. She had won. But Marcus didn't reach for his satchel. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. It was a simple, black, unadorned device. "Sir, you need to put the phone away," Malone said, moving closer. "I will, in a moment," Marcus said. He held up a hand, a gesture of such absolute authority that the officer actually paused. "I just need to make 2 calls. I promise you, after this entire situation will be resolved. One way or another." The cabin of Flight 2217 was no longer just quiet. It was tomb silent. The only sound was the whir of the air conditioning. The 2 security officers, Malone and his partner, stood in the aisle, their hands resting near their belts, unsure what to do next. They were trained for drunks, for shouters, for physical altercations. They were not trained for a man in a cashmere hoodie who could command a room with a single raised hand. "Sir, I'm ordering you to put the phone down," Malone tried again, his voice less certain. "Officer," Marcus said, not unkindly, "I'm about to save you. This co-pilot and Ms. Peterson, a truly catastrophic amount of paperwork. I would advise you to simply wait. It won't be long." He looked at his phone's screen. 6:18 p.m. His team would be at the office. They were always at the office. He hit a speed dial number labeled DH. The phone picked up on the first ring. "David. Marcus. You're supposed to be in the air. What's wrong?" The voice on the other end, David Harris, his COO, was sharp, all business. "Change of plans. David, I need you to listen to me very, very carefully. I'm on transatlantic flight 22SS7 at JFK, or rather I'm not." "What do you mean you're not?" Marcus looked directly at Karen, who was watching him with a smug, confused expression. "I'm being removed from the flight," Marcus said, his voice flat, "for being disruptive and a security threat while sitting in seat 1A. There was a heavy silence on the other end. David Harris knew Marcus Thorne better than anyone. He knew his calm, his patience. He also knew his boiling point. "Who?" David's voice was now ice. "A senior purser named Karen Peterson. She's decided I don't belong in first class." "I see," David said. "What's the play, Marcus? Legal? PR? I can have our entire team on a call in 5 minutes." "No," Marcus said. "Something more. Direct. David, execute contingency clause 14B, the transatlantic contract." Another pause. This one was heavier. "Marcus, clause 14B. That's the nuclear option. That's a 9-figure penalty clause. It's catastrophic. For them." "I'm aware of what the clause is, David. I wrote it. The clause is triggered by a failure of the partner to provide good faith service, or any action that brings the reputation of Thorne Dynamics or its officers into disrepute. I'd say this qualifies." "My God, Marcus, are you sure?" "I'm standing in the aisle with 2 security guards and a co-pilot, David. Your purser," he said, raising his voice so the entire cabin could hear, "has just accused me of being a threat. Yes, David, I am sure. Execute the clause, effective right now, and send the notification to the top." "Done," David said. The line clicked dead. Marcus looked at his phone. 1 down. "Sir, that's enough," Malone said, taking a step forward. "One more," Marcus said, holding up his index finger. He dialed another number. This one was not a speed dial. He knew it by heart. It rang once, twice. "This is Harrington." The voice was brisk, annoyed. "James?" "Marcus Thorne." On the other end of the line, James Harrington, the CEO of Transatlantic Airlines, froze. He was at a charity gala in Manhattan, his tuxedo tight, a glass of champagne in his hand. Marcus Thorne was not a man who called him. They had met twice, once at a brutal contract negotiation and once at the Davos summit. Thorne was not a friend. He was a partner, a critical, terrifyingly efficient partner. A partner whose company, Thorne Dynamics, managed the entire just-in-time logistics chain for Transatlantic's A350 and 787 fleets. Every turbine blade, every avionics chip, every replacement seat cushion for their entire international fleet was sourced, shipped, and managed by Thorne's system. Without Thorne, Transatlantic couldn't legally fly. "Marcus," Harrington said, his voice changing instantly from annoyed to alert. "It's 6 p.m. Aren't you supposed to be on 2217 tonight? I saw your name on the manifest. I was going to send a note to the crew to take special care of you." "Well, James, that note clearly didn't get delivered," Marcus said, a dry, humorless laugh escaping him. "I'm calling you from flight 2217, or rather from the galley. I'm being escorted off." Harrington dropped his champagne glass. It shattered on the marble floor. A waiter rushed over. Harrington waved him away, a look of pure horror on his face. "What? What did you say?" "Your senior purser, a Ms. Karen Peterson, decided I was a security risk. Apparently, my hoodie and my face didn't fit the first class look. She tried to move me to economy. I refused. She called security." "Oh my God," Harrington whispered. "Oh my good, sweet God. Karen Peterson? JFK? I know her. Old school, a dragon." "A dragon, yes, that's a good word for it," Marcus said. "Anyway, James, I'm just calling to let you know this is happening. Oh, and you should probably check your email. My COO, David Harris, just sent you a notification. We've invoked Clause 14B. Harrington's blood ran cold. He knew exactly what Clause 14B was. He had fought for weeks to have it removed from the contract. Thorne hadn't budged. It was the Act of God, or Act of Supreme Stupidity clause. It allowed Thorne Dynamics to terminate their entire service agreement, effective immediately, with a catastrophic financial penalty. "Marcus, no, you can't. We can fix this. I can fix this. Put the pilot on. Put anyone on." Harrington was already running, pushing his way through the crowd, heading for the exit, screaming at his driver. "I don't think you understand, James. It's already done. The alert just went through. As of 6:21 p.m., your entire global parts manifest for your A350 fleet is frozen. Every single plane, from London to Hong Kong, that is scheduled for a C check or needs a part, is now grounded. Indefinitely." On the plane, Karen Peterson's smugness had evaporated, replaced by a dawning, sickening confusion. What was he talking about? This was nonsense. This was a man's dying, desperate bluff. Then, 3 things happened at once. First, the co-pilot's radio, clipped to his lapel, exploded with a sound that was not a voice, but a scream. "Davies! What the hell is happening on your aircraft? I have the chief pilot, the head of operations, and the CEO's office on the line. Hold that door. Do not, I repeat, do not let anyone off that plane. And do not let that door close. Are you there, Davies?" Second, Brenda the gate agent's tablet chimed. She looked down. Her eyes went wide. She looked at the new message, and again. The flight status, which had read "delayed," now flashed a stark, brutal red. "Cancelled." Third, the cockpit door burst open, and Captain Robert Miller emerged. He was a man in his late 50s, a silver-haired veteran with 30,000 hours in the air. He had been a Navy pilot. He commanded respect, and right now he looked furious. "What in the hell?" he boomed, his voice silencing the radio, the passengers and the air itself. "Is going on in my cabin?" His eyes scanned the scene, the security, the co-pilot, white as a sheet, Karen sputtering, and Marcus Thorne standing in the aisle, phone still pressed to his ear. "James," Marcus said, into the phone. "I have to go. Your captain just showed up. I'll let him explain." He hung up the phone and looked at Captain Miller. "Captain, I believe you're the first rational person I've spoken to in 30 minutes. My name is Marcus Thorne, and I am the reason your plane isn't flying tonight." Captain Miller was a man who had seen everything. He'd had engine failures over the Atlantic, medical emergencies over the Pacific, and bomb threats in Frankfurt. But he had never seen anything like this. He looked at the man in front of him, Marcus Thorne. The name rang a bell, a very loud, very expensive bell. He'd seen it on memos from corporate, memos that said VIP and essential partner. He looked past Marcus to Karen Peterson, who was now trying to blend into the galley wall. "Karen," Captain Miller said, his voice dangerously low. "What did you do?" "Captain," Karen began, her voice trembling. "This man, he was being aggressive. He refused my instructions. He threatened me. I was following procedure. He's a security risk." "A security risk," Miller repeated. He looked back at Marcus. "You? A security risk?" "Apparently," Marcus said. "I'm a black man in a hoodie, in seat 1A. To Ms. Peterson, that's a direct threat." "That is a lie!" Karen shrieked, her composure shattering completely. "I never said that. I was protecting my cabin. I was protecting Mr. Chadworth." "Mr. Chadworth?" Miller's eyes found the florid-faced man, who now looked like he wanted to be swallowed by his seat cushion. "You involved another passenger?" Co-pilot Davies finally found his voice. "Sir, she told me he was non-compliant. She insisted we call the gate and have him removed. Security just arrived." Miller looked at the two security officers, who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. "Gentlemen, you can stand down. You will not be needed." "But Captain," Malone said, "we have a report of a non-compliant." "And I am the pilot in command of this aircraft," Miller cut him off. "And I am telling you, the incident is over. Step off my plane." The officers, visibly relieved, nodded and reversed down the aisle. "Brenda," Miller said to the gate agent, who was clutching her tablet. "What is that status?" It's cancelled, Captain. Corporate cancelled it. All passengers. Deplane." The cabin erupted. "Cancelled? What do you mean cancelled? I have a meeting in London. This is outrageous." "Quiet," Miller roared. The cabin fell silent again. "This is my aircraft. We have a significant operational issue. Everyone, please remain seated. I am sorting this out. Karen, galley, now." He grabbed her by the elbow and pulled her into the galley, drawing the curtain with a violent zip. Marcus Thorne sat back down in 1A. He didn't put his earbud in. He wanted to hear this. The whispers from the galley were loud enough. "What did you do?" Miller's voice was a hiss. "I did my job. I followed the procedure for a disruptive passenger." "A disruptive passenger? Or a black man you didn't think belonged? Did you check his status? Did you check anything?" "His status doesn't matter. He refused a crew order. His status is the only thing that matters. Do you have any idea who he is? That's Marcus Thorne. Marcus Thorne." "Who?" Karen's voice was small, confused. "Thorne Dynamics, Karen. The company. The one that manages our entire global logistics chain. The man whose name is on the do not, under any circumstances, delay list that corporate sends out every quarter." You didn't just insult a passenger. You just—" Miller's tirade was cut short by a call from Brenda at the door. "Captain Miller, you need to come out here." Miller pulled the curtain back. Standing in the jet bridge, his face a mask of incandescent rage, was Robert Paulson, Transatlantic's Vice President of JFK Operations. He was wearing a windbreaker over his suit, and he was sweating. Behind him were more security, but this time they were airline executives. "Rob," Miller said, stunned. "What are you doing here?" "James Harrington called my personal cell, Robert," Paulson said, his voice shaking. "He called me from his car. He's on his way. The CEO is driving to JFK. Because of this. Because of her." Paulson's eyes locked on Karen Peterson. It was a look of such pure, unadulterated loathing that Karen physically recoiled. "Ms. Peterson," Paulson said, stepping onto the aircraft. "Come with me. Now, gather your personal items." "What? We have a flight." "You do not have a flight, Ms. Peterson. You do not have a flight. You may, in fact, no longer have a job. You are suspended, pending investigation, effective 3 minutes ago. Hand me your airline ID." "You can't do this," Karen wailed. "I have seniority. The union." "The union can't help you," Paulson snapped. "You didn't just violate policy, Karen. You may have just cost this company its entire international operation. You lied to a flight officer. You made a false security report. You harassed a cornerstone-level passenger. Now, give me the badge." His voice was so cold, so final, that Karen's defiance collapsed like a wet paper bag. She began to cry. Fat, mascara-laced tears. "It's in my bag," she sniffled. She went to the crew locker, pulled out her purse, and handed him her ID badge. He didn't take it gently. He snatched it. "Security will escort you to the operations center. You will wait there." "But the passengers—" "Your colleague Susan will handle the deplaning," Paulson said. He looked at Susan, who was hiding near the drink cart, her eyes wide with terror. "Susan, you're in charge. Deplane these passengers, issue them their hotel and meal vouchers. The flight is cancelled." He then turned, and his entire demeanor changed. The rage vanished, replaced by a smooth, apologetic, almost desperate politeness. He walked to 1A, where Marcus was watching the entire scene, unmoved. "Mr. Thorne," Paulson said, extending a hand. Marcus did not take it. "Mr. Thorne, on behalf of Transatlantic Airlines, I have no words to express our apologies." Marcus just looked at him. "Mr. Harrington, our CEO is on his way, personally. He is distraught. We have a private lounge, the Ambassadors Club. It's yours. We have a car on the tarmac. We are—" "You are," Marcus said, his voice cutting through Paulson's babble, "in a lot of trouble." He stood up. He grabbed his satchel. "I'm not going to your lounge," Marcus said. "I'm not taking your car. I'm going home." "But your trip to London. We have a private jet being fueled for you. A Gulfstream. It can be ready in 40 minutes. At our expense, of course. Please." The please was a beg. It wasn't please fly with us. It was please don't destroy us. Marcus looked at Paulson. He looked at the other passengers, who were now grabbing their bags, grumbling and filming. He looked at Mr. Chadworth, who was trying to make himself small, to sneak past. "You," Marcus said, pointing at Chadworth. "Mr. Chadworth, you were very keen to see me removed. You were very supportive of Miss Peterson's assessment." Chadworth froze. I didn't—" "Mr. Paulson," Marcus said. "This man was complicit in the harassment. I want his name. I want him flagged. I want him banned. My company spends $50 million a year with your airline. If I ever see him on another one of your flights, I'll pull the rest of our contracts. Domestic, too." Paulson looked at Chadworth with a new horror. "Mr. Chadworth, you are now banned from transatlantic. For life. Security will add you to the list." Chadworth's face went from florid to ashen. "You can't! I'm platinum, for life!" "Life," Paulson said, his voice dead, "has a way of changing. Get him out of here." Marcus nodded. "Good. Now, this private jet. Is it ready?" "Yes, sir. This way, sir. Right this way." As Marcus Thorne was escorted off the plane, not in disgrace, but like a visiting king, he passed Karen Peterson. She was standing in the jet bridge, flanked by 2 new security guards, sobbing as Robert Paulson cut her ID badge in half with a pair of trauma shears. She looked up as he passed. Their eyes met. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. He just walked by, leaving her in the ruins of the life she had built, a life she had just incinerated for no other reason than the color of his skin and the hoodie he wore. To understand the karma that was about to befall Karen Peterson and Transatlantic Airlines, one must understand what exactly Marcus Thorne had done. That single phone call was not a bluff. It was a kill shot. Thorne Dynamics wasn't just a logistics partner, it was the logistics partner. In the complex world of modern aviation, a plane cannot fly if even one no-go item, a critical, non-negotiable part, is missing or non-certified. An airline like Transatlantic doesn't keep $1 billion inventory of spare parts in every city. That's where Thorne Dynamics came in. Marcus had built a revolutionary, AI-driven, predictive logistics system. His system knew, based on flight hours, weather, and 1,000 other data points, that an A350 landing in Singapore would probably need a new hydraulic actuator, and his company would have that $200,000 part waiting at the gate with a certified mechanic before the plane even touched down. He was the just-in-time, no-go list killer. His company was the sole, exclusive provider for this service for Transatlantic's entire international fleet. When Marcus told David to execute Clause 14B, a switch was flipped. At 6:21 p.m., an automated alert went out from Thorne's servers to the procurement and legal departments of Transatlantic Airlines. Its subject, Notice of Immediate Termination of Service. Contract 1138TA. At 6:22 p.m., in the Transatlantic Operations Control Center, OCC in Dallas, a red board alert lit up. Every single international flight, from TA Yahause 1 to TA Taiseti, suddenly flashed from green to red, logistics hold. A supervisor, thinking it was a glitch, tried to clear the board. The board stayed red. At 6:23 p.m., Transatlantic Flight 112 from Paris to New York, which had just landed, was unable to get its departure clearance for its return leg. The captain's flight computer read, "Manifest certification pending. Do not proceed." The parts it needed for its legally mandated check, parts that were supposed to be waiting in a crate on the tarmac, were now locked. The Thorne Dynamics crate, sitting 10 feet from the plane, had an electronic lock that now refused to accept the mechanic's code. By 6:30 p.m., as Marcus Thorne was stepping into a black Escalade on the tarmac at JFK, the scale of the disaster was becoming clear. London Heathrow, 7 A350s and 4 787s were grounded. Hong Kong, 3 A350s grounded. Los Angeles, 5 787s, just in from Asia, were unable to turn around. In the air, 19 transatlantic planes, currently over the Atlantic and Pacific, were flying toward airports where they would be able to land, but not take off again. James Harrington, the CEO, was in the back of his Maybach, racing down the Van Wyck Expressway, a highway he usually flew over in a helicopter. He was on a conference call with his entire executive board. "What do you mean he won't answer?" Harrington screamed. "Sir," his general counsel said, "Mr. Thorne's phone is going straight to voicemail, and Mr. Harris, his COO, just sent us a bill for the penalty." "A bill? What bill?" "The early termination penalty, sir. As per Clause 14B, it's $180 million, due in 72 hours or they seize our assets." "Seize our what assets?" "They have. Sir, I told you this was a bad contract. They have a lien on our 28 newest A350s. They paid for the parts, sir. They're just the logistics. They own the parts until we accept them at the gate. As of 6:21 p.m., they've declined to offer them." James Harrington understood. He wasn't just losing a partner. Marcus Thorne owned his airline's ability to fly. He had, with one phone call, taken the airline's most valuable assets hostage, and it was all perfectly, terrifyingly legal. "Get me Robert Paulson," Harrington whispered, his rage gone, replaced by a cold, existential dread. "What is the status of the purser?" "Ms. Peterson is in custody, sir, in our HR office." "Good," Harrington said. "Good. Tell the legal team. Tell them to pay the bill. Pay the $180 million. And tell the board we are writing off the quarter, all of it. Now, get me a line to Marcus Thorne's plane. I don't care what you have to do. Find him. I need to beg. I need to grovel." The grounding was not a metaphor. It was not a delay. Marcus Thorne had, in the span of 10 minutes, functionally shut down an entire international airline. The cost would not be $180 million. It would be that, plus the hundreds of millions in grounded flights, passenger compensation, broken leases, and the catastrophic, unfixable damage to their brand. All because Karen Peterson, who earned $84,000 a year, had decided that a man in a hoodie didn't belong in a seat he had paid for. The scale of her mistake was not just professional, it was astronomical. It was an error of a magnitude that few people ever get the chance to make. The private jet that Transatlantic had chartered for Marcus was a Gulfstream G650, the pinnacle of corporate travel. The cabin was swathed in cream leather and polished dark wood. A single flight attendant, who looked at Marcus with something approaching religious terror, served him a glass of 25-year-old Macallan without him even having to ask. He took a sip. It was excellent. He sat in the silence, the powerful engines a distant hum, and watched as the lights of New York receded. He was, finally, alone with his thoughts. He wasn't celebrating. He felt no joy. He had just detonated a financial bomb, not out of malice, but out of necessity. He had been pushed and pushed and pushed, and he had finally pushed back with the only language a system like Transatlantic understood. Not morality, not an appeal to decency, but a catastrophic, balance sheet-destroying show of force. The exhaustion he had felt at the gate returned, tenfold. He landed in London 6 hours later, long before the cancelled Flight 2217's passengers had even found their hotel rooms. A car was waiting. By the time he was in his penthouse in Mayfair, the sun was rising. He picked up his phone. There were 48 missed calls and 112 texts, all from James Harrington, Robert Paulson, and numbers he didn't recognize, but knew were from Transatlantic's board. He ignored them. He took a shower and went to sleep. The reckoning for Karen Peterson was immediate and brutal. She was held in the HR office at JFK until 3:00 a.m. Her union representative, a grizzled veteran named Mark, sat with her. They were joined by Robert Paulson and 2 of Transatlantic's most senior in-house lawyers. The lawyers didn't speak. They just put a file on the table. "Karen," Mark, the union rep, said, "this is bad. I've never seen anything this bad." "But he was aggressive," Karen insisted, her voice hoarse from crying. "I was following my training." "Here is your training, Miss Peterson," the first lawyer said, sliding a document across the table. Page 8, de-escalation. Page 12, verifying passenger status. Page 19, misuse of security protocols. You didn't follow a single step of your training. What you did was freelance. And here, the second lawyer said, sliding over a stack of papers, are the witness statements from first-class passengers 2C, 3F, and 2A. All of them state, unequivocally, that Mr. Thorne was calm, quiet, and polite, and that you were the aggressor. And here, Paulson added, is the passenger manifest you should have checked. Marcus Thorne, concierge key, million-miler, cornerstone partner. Do you know what that means, Karen? It means he's more important than the pilot. He's more important than me. He is the airline. Karen had nothing. So here's the offer, the first lawyer said. We are, as you know, terminating your employment, effective immediately, for gross misconduct, endangerment of an aircraft, making a false security report, and violation of corporate policies. We are also flagging your FAA license for review, which means you will likely never serve as a flight attendant in this country again. You can't, she wailed. My 22 years, my pension. Your 22 years are why you knew better, Paulson said. And as for your pension, that's where the offer comes in, the lawyer continued. If you sign this paper, a full, binding, non-disclosure agreement, a public apology, and a waiver of all claims against Transatlantic, we will consider not pursuing criminal charges for making a false report to a security officer, and we will allow your pension to vest. It was blackmail. It was also, as her union rep whispered to her, the only lifeline she had. She signed the paper, her hand shaking so badly she could barely hold the pen. She was escorted from the building, a person non grata. Her 22-year career was over. She was 51 years old, unemployable in the only industry she had ever known, and the sole author of her own destruction. She stood at the taxi stand at 4 a.m. in her uniform, a ghost in the fluorescent airport light. The karma for Transatlantic was even harder. Marcus woke up at 3:00 p.m. London time. He finally called James Harrington. The CEO, who hadn't slept, picked up before the first ring. Marcus, thank God, I don't know what to say. I do, James, Marcus said, his voice cold as a winter morning. I'm listening. For 20 minutes, James Harrington grovelled. He apologized. He explained what had been done to Karen, fired, to Mr. Chadworth, banned for life, and to the crew, all suspended. Marcus was silent. And Marcus, Harrington said, his voice cracking, we paid the invoice, the $180 million. It's done. Good, Marcus said. That's the penalty. Now we talk about the price. The price? The price for me to turn your airline back on, James. The negotiations took 2 days. The result was not a simple apology. 1. Transatlantic Airlines would issue a public apology, not to Marcus, but to all its passengers, for a failure in service and a violation of our core values of respect and inclusion. 2. Transatlantic would make a $50 million non-negotiable donation to a charity of Marcus's choice, a non-profit that provided legal aid to victims of racial profiling. 3. The contract with Thorne Dynamics would be renegotiated. The price for their services went up by 30%, and a new clause was added, the Marcus Thorne clause. It stated that if any employee of Transatlantic, at any level, ever subjected a Thorne Dynamics employee to discrimination, the penalty was not $180 million. It was $1 billion. Cash. Harrington had no choice. He signed. 2 hours later, the The red board in the Dallas OCC flickered and turned green. The electronic lock on the crate in Paris beeped and opened. The system was back online. But the story got out. A passenger's video, the one from seat 2C, went viral. It showed Karen's aggression, Marcus's impossible calm, and the moment the captain stormed out. The story, flight attendant tries to boot CAO, grounds airline instead, was everywhere. Transatlantic's stock dropped 18% in a single day, wiping out $1.4 billion in value. Marcus Thorne sat in his London office, looking out over Hyde Park. He felt no victory, just a profound, familiar weariness. He had won. He always won. But he hated that he always had to fight. In the end, this isn't just a story about a flight attendant and a CEO. It's a story about assumptions. Karen Peterson looked at Marcus Thorne and saw a problem. Marcus Thorne looked at Karen Peterson and saw a system. She bet against him and lost her career, her pension, and her reputation. He bet on himself and cost an airline over $1 billion to prove a point. The karma here was swift, it was brutal, and it was financial. It serves as a cold, hard reminder. You truly never, ever know who you are talking to. The person you dismiss, the person you assume doesn't belong, might just be the one person holding the keys to your entire world. What did you think of this story? Did Karen get what she deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love stories of instant, hard-hitting karma, make sure to like this video, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more stories just like this one.